Howdy, folks. Welcome back to Viva La Cats. I am your host, Justin Hiles, accompanied by my great friends, Joel Spencer and Steve Maurer. And today we also have two extra guests in Eric Lilly and Charlie Walter of both the Bearcat Bunch and Chatterbox Bearcats. We have a lot to cover in this show, but we're also going to try to keep it quick. So to start everything off, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. Go ahead and give yourself a quick plug for both of you, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, Lilly, I'll let you take the floor here.
Yeah, I'm Eric Lilly from the Bearcat Bunch. Been on UC Twitter for ever since Twitter started. It feels like maybe even high school. But yeah, starting to have a little fun with posting like schedule breakdowns and just stuff that I'm already doing. You may as well post it, right?
Yeah.
Scholarship sheets, stuff like that. And on Chatterbox Bearcats mostly.
Great.
So Lilly and I go way back without even knowing it. We went to Moeller High School together. We were both on the Bearcat News forums way back in the day. I went into local TV and radio, worked in Lexington, Kentucky, covering Coach Cal in UK, Tennessee, Rick Barnes and company, the worst Butch Jones team in Tennessee history that got him fired, down in Alabama prior to that, and then for the Cincinnati Reds with Reds Live, and then also out in San Francisco. Started the podcast because I love the Cats. Didn't even go to UC, went to OU, but from the city of Cincinnati, born and raised. And, Steve Logan and company, the first athletes and teams that I ever fell in love with. And just want to provide good content for the people, talk Bearcats, give the faithful everything I know, and mix in a little entertainment value with. Wonderful. Also host Locked On Warriors. Completely different side note. So if you're
shout out Jacob Evans.
Yeah, shout out Jake Evans. Shout out Danny Fortson and co.
Yeah,
awesome.
Chuck, by the way, we know you because our buddy Donnie Brummer, Donnie Smokes.
Oh yeah,
known to us.
Oh, yeah.
You guys were in school back in the day. So
shout out Pacelli Panthers. Shout out CJ Frederick and Deuce McBride.
That's right.
Some legends. Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. So
well, I'm hearing I'm getting outnumbered with the East Siders.
I'm from Milford. I'm like real East Side.
Deep East.
Yeah, but we listen. Like I listen to your show like every post game, or like you guys bring really good stuff too. Like the one I most enjoyed on a nihilistic sense was the one after the K-State game where Lilly, it was you and Niehaus, and you guys were just so bummed out after that game. And it was a hate listen, but I listened to the whole thing. So
I always wondered who
2 touchdowns while we were doing it.
Yeah.
And then the Bearcat, the Bearcat celebrating to a drop pass in the background. But I wonder because we get the metrics, and that I think it outdid our Georgia Tech numbers that day. I'm like, how the hell are more people listening to the football, disaster than a huge win over Georgia Tech? And by huge, I mean a blowout performance. But man, people still care about football despite the lackluster results at the end of the year.
Our best episode to date is still when Luke Fickell left Cincinnati. So people love disaster and misery loves company. And with that, let's get into non-con. Not a whole lot of disaster here. I think this is kind of just the best case scenario. Bearcats go 10-1. Your loss in non-con comes to Villanova. You beat Xavier, you beat Dayton, you beat your local rivals. And I think that adds a lot more value going into Big 12 play. But first and foremost, for both of you, let's start here with Charlie. I'm curious, what do you think of the value of the Bearcats non-conference record and schedule for not only March, but just how that can carry them into starting Big 12 play?
I think you got a quad 1 win that's going to carry as a quad 1 win all season in Dayton. And we've seen how hard it is to get some of those at times. You win it on a neutral site, it's going to look good. I don't think by the end of the year the Villanova loss is going to look bad, especially without Dan Skillings in the game. And then the Xavier one's just going to kind of be a neutral win in there, sprinkled with NKU that I don't think is going to get above. I mean, quad 2 is probably a stretch, but there's a quad 3 win in there. So it wasn't all quad 4 and cupcakes, but much to be desired still in the Big 12. But I think it puts you in a good spot to where anything over now, I would say anything over 500, like entering the season, right? But as of right now, the Big 12, I mean, it doesn't look great. I still think there are plenty of chances for quad 1, quad 2 wins where you hit a 500 mark in the Big 12 with what they did in the out of conference, and you're talking NCAA tournament. But sights are set higher than that, fellas. Come on now. sights are set higher than that. So I think what the non-conference showed us was that this team is competitive, that they're good, and that physically they can match up with just about anyone on the schedule. I don't think I see that change in Big 12 play.
Very fair. Eric?
Yeah, and I kind of liked having I'm ready for these hard out of conference schedules, but I think this year it worked out pretty well with like, I mean, people Day was out too. It wasn't just Dan. Like he missed a couple games. He was getting, I think NKU was his first game, and Dan's back. So I think, we got a quality win with Dayton, Xavier, Georgia Tech. They're just going to be there on the resume. It's not going to stand out, but compared to last year where I think our resume was it stood out with how bad it was in the out of conference, I think we've gotten past that. It's a little better. It's not going to stick out like a sore thumb in March. And I think worst case, we lose a seed line because of it. I don't think it's really much to like Villanova when we lost in that moment. It felt horrible, but it's going to be a Q1 or Q2 away lot. Like on paper, the committee just doesn't give a crap about those as long as you don't have a habit of doing that. And I guess tomorrow we find out if maybe it's a habit, I guess.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Oh, Steve, you're muted.
I got caught by the mute monster early. I tried to do the same thing. But,
It'll get you, man.
Yeah. Well, so I was just looking at Bart Torvik real quick, and Eric Dixon, he's the #1 rated player on Bart Torvik's metrics right now. Like I'm not really going to get mad that you lost the game basically to Eric Dixon. Other players on Villanova contributed, but that was kind of the Eric Dixon takeover game. So, and without Dan Skillings in his home city. So if that's your worst loss that you have to date, and hopefully, knock on wood, your worst loss all season, then I'm fine with that. But you're right. We'll see tomorrow what happens. But I don't know. I think we're going to talk about K-State in a little bit. But I want to talk about some of the other teams in this league because we'll save that for the back half of the show. I have some opinions I want to tell you guys about.
Real quick, too. So we had talked a few weeks ago, I guess right around when the season started. Maybe it's been more than a few weeks at this point. A few months ago when the season started. And Joel, I know that we had, kind of considered our non-conference predictions where we might slip up, where we might succeed. What did you end up having again? Were you at, I don't remember if you were at 11. I want to say you were at 11-0.
I was sitting at 11-0.
The true believer.
Yep.
The true believer. Steve and I both sat at 10-1. I think this is a comfortable place to be. I really think it is. And I think where you go looking towards March, you have a lot of strength that in all considerations, it could have gone a lot worse. But you took care of business in the games that you needed to. You won big in some of those Q4 games, which of course you're not really going to get a lot of value out of those games, but making sure that you can cover and cover big, I think is huge in those because it just helps show the quality of your team and being able to put teams away. Joel, I'm curious what you thought about non-con and how that transitions now into Big 12.
I mean, of course, you look towards March and you think of, what's going to help your resume, what's going to hurt. But I think even just outside of the resume, you just look at the resilience that it added to the team. They had a tough loss playing on the road against a rowdy opponent. You went to Georgia Tech. You were able to pull that game out. You had a nail biter with NKU. You had the nail biter with Xavier. You had back and forth on a neutral court, and it truly was neutral, even though it was in downtown Cincinnati against Dayton. So I think it really just spoke to the resilience of this team and how Wes Miller is able to lead this team to these close wins that we haven't necessarily seen in the past. So that's what really encourages me moving into Big 12 play is that they're kind of battle tested. And I think that they at least have the mental fortitude to go into Big 12 play and try and make some noise.
Very fair. Very fair. Well, going into the Big 12, obviously we're going to enter the gauntlet. Seems like it's, as Charlie mentioned before, maybe not as strong as it was last year. You're seeing some teams slip up early. You're seeing some teams that you would expect to be undefeated at this point in the season, or maybe just have one loss like the Bearcats do, with 2, 3, 4, 5. And some of these teams I think are getting off the rails pretty fast. And so Eric had gone over earlier this week with the Bearcats bunch sort of breakdown, looking at some of the teams in the Big 12. And I'm curious, Eric, what are your thoughts on this conference and where the Bearcats might stack up?
Yeah, and we're actually on KenPom, we're behind the Big 10 right now. Like that happened overnight, I think. So the SEC has just been there's nothing we can say right now. They are the best league. They just killed everybody. It's pretty unprecedented. I think they're gonna tie or break the Big East record when we were there. Whatever, how many teams that was?
11. Yeah,
11.
So
Yeah,
they'll get 12. They have 14
they're
projected
getting 11
on bracketologists
easy
right now.
Yeah,
so
they might get 13.
They might do. They're good.
Like if Oklahoma loses, Oklahoma could get in at like 7-11 probably in their league play. But like to me, the big issue has been like Oklahoma State, TCU, Kansas State being shit. And then on the other side, Arizona and Baylor are a little lower than preseason. They're in the 20s, and I believe they're both top 10, maybe top 15. And if you're a UC fan right now and just thinking we can't win this thing, you're soft. Like, come on, guys. It's in play. And I think it's okay to be excited and, get your hopes up about stuff like this. I think Iowa State, I was high on them before the season. They look great. And Kansas are the two I would put at 1 and 2 for the regular season. And yeah, in that
Kansas,
schedule breakdown, I think, what was that?
I was just gonna say Kansas. Like, I don't think they're really that strong, just because they still don't have a bench somehow. Like,
they're weird.
They added players in the transfer portal. They added Store, but they still don't have a bench. So unless
they're
they
not even
develop
playing
that
Store
bench,
much.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm just like confused. I have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, and just to be clear, my Kansas, like throwing Kansas in it too, was a schedule-based thing. Like I think Iowa State's gonna win this thing, mostly because Houston kind of got screwed with their schedule, in my opinion. But it's open. I think when I made this graphic, I had 6 teams, and I was like, why am I not including Arizona and BYU? Like, we just saw what happened to football this year. Yeah. So I think basketball is a little different. And over 20 games, the best team's probably going to win, In football, it's just so much of it's schedule based.
Man, Iowa State's been a house of hell. I mean, it was the homecoming game last year. It was the game this year that was just a disaster where they fell apart in football. And then in basketball, it felt like there were 15 straight possessions where Cincy couldn't get it past half court. There were 25 turnovers or something in the game. So that's a scary team right now. Scary team in pretty much every sport. They look good.
Yeah, something's going on. Maybe
we
it's
get them on the road this year, so that's the loss I have on the schedule. The one guarantee.
Yeah, I think that's very fair too. I think when you look across the Bearcats' schedule as a whole, I'd say that game still has me the most nervous. Baylor is just one of those teams that always feels like they're there, even if they're not at 100%. It's one that I'm still fairly concerned about. And just that stretch. I mean, we're talking about like going into the gauntlet. We did this last year. We opened up with some ranked teams. We got hit straight in the teeth to start the season. Of course, we handled it very well as best we could. But I think in this case, where you had mentioned earlier, Eric, that all of these teams could end up being really good or they could end up being really bad. And we're going to have to find our place in it. Hopefully it's at the top. You start off with at Kansas State, Arizona at home, at Baylor, Kansas at home. That is a super, super tough stretch to start out, and probably going to be the hardest stretch of your season until you get to Iowa State, West Virginia, TCU, Baylor, Houston. That kind of stretch in the back half has me a little nervous too. But to start this off, I'm curious, in those 4 games, you got 2 away, 2 at home for polling for everybody. Do you guys think that is a realistic angle for the Bearcats to be looking to try to go 3-1? Kansas State looks down. Arizona looks down. Baylor's not really looking like they're at full strength. And you got Kansas at home. I mean, is there any reason that the Bearcats shouldn't be 3-1 in that stretch?
The whole Villanova experience scares me a little bit because that's a team that has talent. You go on the road, they kind of hit you in the mouth. And that's what I feel like it could be. I don't know about Kansas State. They have some talent, but for whatever reason, haven't meshed at all. Probably a lot to do with some coaching there. Maybe a change on the horizon at some point, although they extended Tang, correct?
Yeah, so they'll have to figure out that buyout, but like I don't know, they figure out some other stuff with like paying Coleman Hawkins $2 million to be Coleman Hawkins. Like that was the most shocking transfer portal addition. I'm like, but he's Coleman like I just didn't think he was that good, and it's kind of showing right now that like,
And the Bearcats have beat Coleman Hawkins before.
Yeah, exactly.
People forget that.
Yeah,
people do forget that the Mike Saunders game.
Yeah, indeed, a name not too far out of the books at this point. This is a good thing to mention too. I know we're going to talk about this K-State game a little bit, but just for reference on them, even they've lost 3 of their last 3, and that's like you lose to St. John's, you lose to Drake, and you lose to Wichita. And you know the Wichita game, they got blown out by 19. Like that's a big loss. And even the St. John's game was, you know, I think like 17 or 16 points. So some of these games have really gotten away from them. And I'm just curious, when you're starting off with the Big 12, you're starting off with a team like K-State. I think it's really manageable. Even though it's on the road, it's going to be a tough environment. I think that's one, again, where like last year we started with BYU to kick off Big 12 play. BYU was ranked. They looked really good. Nobody had beat them. I think they were undefeated when we went to play them.
They lost 1 game, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was walking into like a house of horrors, and we came out clean on the other side.
Yeah, and honestly managed that game pretty much through the whole thing. And so I'm curious if we see a little bit of deja vu there, or if this is the game that might be like that Villanova one where it's like, okay, you should at this point hopefully beat this team, and maybe it gets away from you.
I see it in 2 ways. One is that Kansas State's actually just trash. They've thrown in the towel. This is not working out. There's a coaching change imminent, and it's just because they weren't good last year. Weren't awful, but it appears they could be legitimately awful and crumble. The other thing is it's just a situation like UC had the year we made the Sweet 16 in 2012, where we lost to Presbyterian and maybe UAB. There were some terrible non-conference losses. And then you just kind of figure it out as the season goes along. Kansas State coming off, you know, how many practices without a game to where they can at least try. So that's the one thing that scares me, that it's game 1 of the Big 12 slate, and you just don't really know what to expect. At the same time, I could see it going sideways quickly, and this being one that it was like, why didn't we hammer the adjusted line of -12.5 or whatever? Because Kansas State's not very good. So I see it from both lenses. You always got to worry about a team that has talent unless you've seen them just be trashed the entire year. And I don't think there's a large enough sample size to 100% declare them out of it, because let's get real. When you start conference play, you still have some dreams and aspirations ahead of you. They're tied first place in the Big 12. So it's not over yet. That's the one thing that scares me.
And UC lost 2 games to West Virginia and Oklahoma State last year. So
yeah, let's not act like we've been Duke the last 10 years.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, exactly.
Bad versions of those teams too at that point in the season.
Well, and then the other thing too is that like the shooting has kind of been in a rut the last couple of games. I mean, we've won. It hasn't really like ultimately hurt us, but the shooting's kind of been in a rut. Even though we've kind of shortened down the rotation a little bit, shooting still kind of hurts us. It's not great, guys, when I've started to notice how CMOS's form looks really weird, because like he brings it down first and then like kind of push, and when he's making it, I'm like, oh yeah, great, keep doing it. But it's gotten to the point where a guy who has not played organized basketball in probably 15 years, starts criticizing CMOS's form. It's like, why is he shooting like that? So I just want to see them like get the form back and really start knocking down those threes, because I don't think we need to be a live by the 3, die by the 3 team. But when you've got, you know, you're probably not going to have a size advantage against a lot of Big 12 teams. So you're going to have to knock down those deep ones. And that is just kind of the worrying point right now, is that we're cold and then we ended cold and went away for a week. So hopefully they're getting some shots up tonight. But that's the only thing that really worries me so far.
Joel?
Sorry, we're all getting affected by the mute machine. Yeah, I also worry about K-State for all the same reasons that were just mentioned. K-State's coming out with something to prove that, hey, we're not a dog shit team. Like, we are in this as well. And that worries me, of course, and it worries all of us. So I think it's just wait and see, what version of this team are we going to play, and what version of the Bearcats are we going to get? Are we going to get a team that is, having an oh shit moment? Oh, those are the puppies. Sorry.
You said
I
dog
just like
shit
to-
as the dog barked, so I was crying.
No. Like both times that you said shit on this show, the dog barked, and the first one was dog shit, and I think that was just incredible comedic timing.
That's the
Honestly,
range jar. She
sure.
knows. She
Yeah.
follow her reins every time.
She does not tolerate bad behavior in this house. I'll tell you what.
There you
But yeah, you of course don't know what you're going to see. And is this a Bearcats team that's going to come out swinging, that is battle tested against Dayton, has come back from adversity against Xavier, like chipping away at leads, or is this a team that's just going to be shocked and kind of be deer in the headlights?
I'm going to just go against you real quick, Joel. Our man Eric just said at the start of the show, let's not be soft, all right? Let's be hard. Let's go in hard to this schedule.
No, I get it, but you got to look at the line, man. You got to look at what Vegas thinks
do,
your
yeah.
team. 4.5.
That line scared me.
That's a close game.
Yeah.
Close game right there.
God.
Got to get hard.
Betting road game lines as a UC fan is just, oh, man.
They were pretty good last year, though. They were the roadkill cats for a while.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. The Texas Tech and BYU games were good ones. So, I mean,
they were both early.
Yeah. I kind of think that this will be like the Georgia Tech game, where it was like the line was a little bit farther away for that. But I just don't really see Kansas State having the buzz right now. The students aren't there, probably. Like, the 6-5 team, you just lost to an in-state rival. Fans were complaining after that game that they shouldn't play that game because it does nothing for them. I've done that routine a few times, so I know what that's like. But I just want to look at the rest of the schedule, though. Like, I want to get your guys' thoughts on where, like, you don't have to give me a number if you don't do predictions or anything, but I kind of see 15, 16 wins in this schedule here in the back half, because I'm just looking, and like you said, Lilly, there's only 2 stone cold locks of losses for me. There's one, the at Iowa State game, and then Houston. Until we beat Houston, I will say that we're going to lose to Houston. So, but other than that, there's like 16 to 18 winnable games on this schedule. And maybe that's me being extremely high on the Bearcats, but I don't really see any team other than Iowa State or Houston as a Cincinnati fan being completely unbeatable.
Real fast, I'll just add this too before we get into our two guys here. But we've got, at this point, 20 conference games left for the rest of the year. You've already got your first 11 with non-con out of the way, so you have a clean slate of 20 games. In that, we got to know, with what already Steve said, what is, I think, the game that worries you the most, and then what's the game that you're most excited about and think the best odds are there? Continue.
I'm going to go, the game that worries me most, and it's a cliche answer, is at Kansas State, because it's first up on the schedule, and I really truly don't know 100% what to expect. I think we're good. I think we're physical. I think 16 to me is a little high. I'm going to go 13-7, I think, is a fair number. It's hard to win road games in college basketball. And I mean, if you're going 16-4, you are a damn good team. You're a 2 seed, you're a 3 seed. I don't care what the conference is. And I don't know if I'm ready to proclaim that. I still haven't seen any back to the basket threat on this team. I think Paige is going to be good when it's all said and done. But as a sophomore, I just don't think it's fair to rely on him as a consistent threat. I think other teams in this conference have that. I think we're going to be scrappy, but at the same time, we've shown that there are going to be nights where we just can't hit the broadside of a barn. And, traveling to Baylor and games at BYU and even on the road at Central Florida, there's just games that I think we're going to slip up here and there. And 16 to me is a stretch, but hey, so
Eric.
The one that makes me the most nervous is Arizona at home. And it's because of last year. And this combines with football. Like, I am sick of leaving our games losing. Like, the home games, we are just on this crazy, whether it's West Virginia in football, Texas in basketball, just all these, feels like we're about to have this big moment, which we had with the shootout. It's great. Feels great. But let's keep
Houston
it going.
in basketball last year, that was devastating.
Yeah.
10-point lead in the second half, I think.
Yeah. Houston, Oklahoma was brutal. Oklahoma State, brutal. I am nervous for Arizona because I think if we lose that game, it kind of will remind people of like, this is just happening. Like the people that go to all the home games, it just sucks.
Mhm.
So that's the one I'm most nervous for. And I think we match up pretty good against them. So I think it's a good opportunity to win at home and kind of set the record straight that this team's different than last year. And then the other nervous spot, I saw Texas Tech at home. I think Tech is sick. I have them right there with us. Like, I think they're just as good as we are. And we play Tech at home and then at BYU at Utah. So if we lose that Tech game and then, elevation, road trip, no matter how bad BYU and Utah are, that game is never a gimme. They could be 150 in Ken Palm and I'd be nervous just with the elevation. And it's just a weird prep for stuff like that, games like that.
And the Madsen brothers.
And
You
yeah,
might have a little extra juice.
Revenge tour. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And Gabe, right now, Gabe's the second leading scorer in the Big 12 with 19 points per game. So, they can beat anybody. I mean, they're not great, but they can beat you. So, yeah, my nerves is basically about the home games. We got to get this shit straight. We got to win these home games.
I'll tell you this: people that said John Brannon couldn't recruit, to have him and not Zach Harvey, but Tari Eason in the same class, man. Like he, now the Liberty recruit Bryson Spell that we brought in, that wasn't looking good. That class would have been tough, but a class with Gabe Madsen putting up 19, all conference kind of guy, and then Tari Eason, lottery pick, great in the NBA. I mean, I guess that's one thing John Brannon did right. Get two guys that transferred.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that. Go ahead, Joel.
Oh, I will say he brought back Midnight Madness that I think should still be a recurring thing.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that no one picked him up, honestly. Like you can recruit like that before NIL. Like you got to have some like way with words. So I'm just kind of amazed no one picked him up. But I don't know. He's running a painting business now. So if anyone needs their house painted, go call John Brannon.
No, I'm a house painter. John Brannon's trying to ruin my life here.
Okay, then don't.
Now he's trying to take down my family business.
Everybody hates John Brannon.
Hey, just be careful about what you say because Lisa's burners will come after you.
Yeah. I heard he runs his painters too hard. Joel, what are your thoughts on all of this? Where do you see the Bearcats shaping up at the end of non-con through these 20 games?
Look, I think 15-5 is very realistic. I think we're all going to float around the 14, 15, 16. I mean, in previous episodes, the three of us were all within single digits of each other, or within one or two of each other for record predictions as well. So I definitely think that it's realistic. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the same games that we've all spoken about, I also look at, you talk about at Houston, at Iowa State, those are going to be really tough tests. And then you really hope you don't drop a random, Q3 loss in there, Q2. But I don't see that happening. I think this is a team that's going to take care of business when it matters and is going to be in a lot of really tight games with the top teams. So I think they'll get some really great consideration and be towards the top of the standings by the end of the year.
Very fair. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably overzealous with 16, but I just have really liked what we've done even on our worst days, where we've still beat Dayton. And I don't really consider Xavier a good team, but I think you got that monkey off your back now, and you don't have that loss hanging over you for the rest of the year. And, beating Dayton and just the defense that we played so far against 3 or 4 of our best opponents. And Dixon, we talked about Dixon earlier, but I feel really, really good about what the defense looks like so far on this year, and they've just been really tenacious. So I think the problem though is that the defensive rebounding needs to be fixed, and then the three-point attempts, either we need to be taking a couple better opportunities, or you just got to start making them. I think I've liked most of the looks that they've gotten. It's mostly just you're just long, or Jizzle has been like hot and cold. I think you just need to have some of your best players also step up, because you can't have another game where Jizzle doesn't make a field goal. You just can't have some of those games in Big 12 play. So I do stand by the 16, but let's say I wouldn't bet money on 16, because 16-4, you're probably winning the league. You're not winning the league. I think Iowa State and Houston can go like 18.
I think 16-4 can win it. I'll look up who won it last year.
It was
what record.
15-3 Houston. But let me sneak in I forgot to say official prediction. I'm going 14-6.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of winnable games on here, but you're right. The road tests, like at Iowa State and at West Virginia, those two games, West Virginia looks a lot better than I thought they would. I like DeVries, but I just thought there would just be a 1 year like bounce after how bad they were last year, but they look good, man. So those games, and then the trips to BYU and Utah, like those, it's just, you're right. You guys are right. It's a tough league. I don't really think it's as tough as this year as it was last year, but it's still going to be like tough to go through 20 games, no breaks either. So
I just look at the Xavier game, man, and obviously that's one that, regardless of Xavier's record, is going to give us fits at Fifth Third Arena. But the fact that we weren't able to close that one out cleanly and really had to have a heroic effort at the end of the game. And I know we shot horribly, but I just don't think that this is a squad that's going to run the table when it comes to the home court. I think 14-6. I'll raise it to 14-6. But I mean, I see some losses in there. I think at Baylor is going to be a tough game, even though we do match up against them well. And I'm afraid of that 2-game stretch there with Baylor, Kansas, and quite frankly, at Colorado, I think it's going to be tough. Mentioned Texas Tech at home. That's one that scares me. Aside from that, there aren't a ton of games at home that scare me. But just road games, Houston, Baylor, back-to-back. I think if we can avoid back-to-back losses all season, there's a chance that we can compete for this conference championship. But it starts with that first 2-game stretch of Baylor and Kansas. Can you avoid back-to-back and split there? Can you win one on the road at Kansas State? If that's the case, 3-1, starting it off strong, and then just seeing how the rest of the league progresses, because there's talent in this league. There's no doubt about that. Plenty of talent. Just non-conference, it really did not do a ton to make us, even like Baylor. I mean, Jeremy Roach. Love Jeremy Roach at Duke. I didn't think he looked great this non-conference. That's the thing you got to factor in, right? Is how these players fit in. Fit matters. Say that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that this Bearcat squad is really starting to find their groove, but all that matters is you've got to stay healthy. You know, you've had Skillings, Day, you've had Aziz take a couple hard falls, you've had Hickman. There have been quite a few injuries that have had guys limping or, forced to sit out for multiple games on end. So I think just as you get into this tough, grueling Big 12 schedule, you got to find a way to stay healthy and keep all your stars on the court and keep that bench ready to come in when necessary.
It's a very good point. To put a wrap on this one in this section, I'm going to say 14-6. I said at the beginning of the season that the Bearcats would go 24-7. I still firmly believe that, and that was with a 10-1 non-con. So I'm sticking to that. I think it looks really good for the Bearcats where their schedule lays out. It sucks that your two toughest opponents on the schedule are going to be at Houston and at Iowa State. But it's also kind of a little bit of grace in the fact that you don't have a home and home with them. If you can manage to just take one of those two games on the road, I think that's going to be huge and can give you a lot of momentum. But let's be honest, like this team is going to slip up a few times. We've already said, we've said it multiple times. The Xavier game is a perfect example of that, where, I think that game is going to get you in the Big 12 in the way that it didn't here. And as we've already mentioned too, the cold shooting nights, like you just can't have that. I think if you have Dan and Jizzle and CMOS, if all three of those guys go cold again, or you don't get that out of Day off the bench, or you're not getting somebody who's just dropping like 16, 17 in a night, you need somebody to do that every single night. And there is enough talent on this team that between Mitchell, Dan, CMOS, so on and so forth, Jizzle, Day, like between all those guys, somebody needs to step up every single night. It doesn't need to be 2 or 3 or 4 guys every single night, but you need at least one. And when you can't have that, I think that's going to bite you in the ass. And I think it's going to happen a couple times this season. Just trying to keep a realistic lens on that. Like some of these away games, I think are going to be tough, but really that Iowa State and Houston one, I think beyond all relief, I really feel like you could chalk both of those up as a loss. Houston, I still firmly believe in Kelvin Sampson as our number. And as much as I hate the idea of giving another one to them, which would make it like, 12 straight, 11, 12 straight. I think that's the game that's still going to get you. It's going to be the stinger. But if you can pull that off at the end of the season, it's literally March 1st. when you get hot at the right time, you get a big win at the right time. It's going to mean a lot because though the committee looks at everything, there's still a little bit of that. What have you done for me lately? Pulling off a big win at Houston would be huge for that back half of your season. So again, I'd say 14-6. Take care of business in the games that you have to, and the games like the road one against West Virginia last year or the Oklahoma State game. Don't let those get you. They're different teams this year, but do not let those games get away from you, because that just goes and shows the fine line of what makes a team in this conference good to elite. From the good to great, like that's the jump. You can't let those games get ahead of you. And that's why Iowa State and Houston and some of these other teams looked really, really good last year, and why even Kansas didn't necessarily excel to the next level, because they got gotten a few games, like the UCF game last year on the road. Got them. So don't be that team that gets got when you're really
and
good.
West Virginia.
Yeah, and West Virginia. Like you have to be the team that takes care of business when all else fails. And so I think if you can do that, you might have a chance at going and winning this conference. But we'll see how all that goes. We've already talked a ton about K-State. We talked all about the Big 12, but really fast, let's just hit on this for the K-State game, which is tomorrow night, of course, on the road, in the Octagon of Doom. The Bearcats, as it currently stands, are 10-1. They're playing, of course, K-State. We are currently ranked 17th. K-State, who is 6-5 to start the season on a 3-game losing streak. Matchup predictor right now has it at a 74% for the Bearcats. And I believe we pulled the line earlier. Who had the line?
3.5.
It was 3.5 on
4.5.
FanDuel.
I saw 4.5.
4.5. Ooh.
Yeah, money's going to come in on UC on that number.
Yeah. So I want to know from everybody in the room, what do you got on? Should we call it? If we got 4.5 and 3.5, should we call it 4 and open the idea for a push?
Let's do it.
It's our show.
right.
We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, fine. We're calling the line 4. You can push if you want. We'll start with Charlie. Let's go around.
I think Kansas State sucks. Bearcats win by 12.
All right. I like it. Eric.
I'm teasing that line, and whatever it goes to.
I like that.
There's not going to be as many fans. The fans are not happy.
Oh, no.
If we start out hot, the team might quit. The fans might boo. And the one thing I keep looking at is Kansas State is 230th in defensive rebounding. And we have Dan Skilling's back. And even if we miss shots, we're winning this game, boys.
Very fair.
And we're covering the 4.
I like that.
Joel.
Cats by 13, just to spite Charlie.
Not confident enough there. Got to go to 13. Steve?
I'm going to go an even 10. I do think that you can get away early, but we've held teams to low numbers within the first 10 minutes, and I think the first 10 minutes will say it all. So if you want to wait and jump on the live line, like obviously you go in hard, bet the 4, but if you want to double down on your money and you see, okay, K-State is just really not into this game, and it's like 20-4 at the under 8-minute mark timeout, then double down on it. Get on that alt line, because I think they could put up some silly numbers, because that Georgia Tech game is proof that if things get out of hand, like UC can really put up a margin of victory on a team, especially a team that is considered within their league or like a Power 4 team. But I want to see them finish off a game, finish off strong, make some shots. So I will take the under, though, because like you said, Justin, UC has held every team to under 70 this year so far.
He stole it. That's what I was going to use. So we're going to say it again. The Bearcats have held every single team so far this season. That includes Xavier, that includes Dayton, that includes Villanova, who beat them, under 70 points. I think that means something that has merit. And I really genuinely think that the Bearcats can go in there in what should still be a tough environment, even if it's not super rowdy, even if it might get away from them. I think the Bearcats can win this one. I think they can do it comfortably. I'm going to say Bearcats by 8. Bearcats by 8 on the road, and they're going to continue their streak of holding teams under 70. K-State is not going to break 70. The Bearcats will win the race to 69, and the Bearcats will win by 8. That's the prediction. That's what we've got. That's what we've got there. Guys, Steve, what's next?
Well, we have the Charlie Hustle next, but I do want to shout out our man Charlie. Charlie's got to run, so thank you, Charlie, for being with us. Let us know again where we can find you, and if we like the Warriors too. Where can we find? Where can we listen to you talk?
I want to know, is this segment literally planned? Because it's like Charlie's got to hustle. He's got to go out. He's got to take the dogs to make sure the wife doesn't get mad at him. I don't know if that was incorporated after the show began. If not, I mean, that's just an impressive irony along with the dog shit earlier. So
Great irony.
Yeah, we're on a heater right now. But yeah, Chatterbox Bearcats, that's a show. You can see Lilly on the midweek show with Nick Niehaus, and then I do the post-game shows typically with my man Hudson Klauke. We call him Houdini. And then Lilly and Niehaus will actually be doing the show with me tomorrow because Hudson's down in Florida, and he's on PTO, I guess, on TO. Let's put it that way. He's on TO. So Locked on Warriors is another way you can catch me. Talk about Golden State, and you never know. Maybe when I'm hosting the show, a Jizzle James or a Dylan Mitchell or someone like that winds up in Golden State, you have a reason to tune in to the show if you haven't already. So, yeah, good stuff, fellas. Beat Kansas State. That's all I got to say. Beat them convincingly. I think if Dayton taught us anything, it's that this team can just out-tough you, even if shots aren't going in. Xavier proved that even when you're having a god-awful night in a game you're historically supposed to lose, you could still come out of it unscathed. And NKU taught you that a game that you think is close is actually a 16-point win. So that's what this team can do.
Very fair. Very fair. Thank you very much for joining us, Charlie. We really appreciate
Good stuff.
it.
Thanks, fellas.
All right.
Speaking of Charlie hustling, by the way, you can get your Charlie Hustle Cincinnati Bearcats gear at the site of the official Big 12 outfitter, charliehustle.com. Vintage made fresh. Charlie's hustling. If you're not watching, you got to be watching these episodes on YouTube. Join us on the stream. This is a great shirt that I'm wearing right now. It's a Charlie Hustle shirt. So, it's almost the new year. Might be time for some new gear. So head on over to charliehustle.com. Use that promo code 101215 for 15% off your first order. We need to see some of you people buying some gear. So if you do buy some gear from Charlie Hustle, let us know. Send us a tweet. We'll retweet it. We're pretty free with our retweets, so we like to toss them out. But shout out to Charlie Hustle, man. I've been supporting us from the time that we joined the 1012 Podcast Network. So keep supporting Charlie Hustle. They keep supporting us. So thank you, Charlie Hustle. Once again, 10-12-15 for 15% off your first order.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Steve. Oh, guys, Steve mentioned it. I don't even know if we mentioned it all. I might have said it at the beginning of the year or the episode. Maybe I didn't. Happy New Year. This is going to be our New Year episode. So for those of you who might be listening later in the week, Happy New Year. Hopefully it has been great for you thus far. Hopefully the world has not ended as the clock struck 12. Maybe we'll get lucky and there'll be another Ohio State type situation where it just goes a little wide left at midnight. Here's what we've got. We're at this stretch. We've got the Big 12 head to head. We've covered so many different things already. We've talked about every single team. Steve, you pulled our records for this setup. Eric, you get to be the ghost team because you're just the number 4 now. So Steve's going to drop the bomb on us. And Eric, for you and for the listeners who are not already caught up, at the start of the season, we did a Big 12 draft, and therefore everybody drafted 4 teams. There was a fourth team, which was the ghost team, and that team had a grand total of how many wins and losses?
Oh yeah, and so the stakes are, by the way, you had to add. Joel, tell
I was going to get to.
Oh, okay, all right.
Go if you're gonna read the stakes. Go ahead, Justin.
Okay, well, fine. We'll just give the stake too. The stake is for every game in wins that you are behind the ghost team, you have to run a full suicide. And so far, it's looking a little bleak for some of us because the ghost team has just outclassed. And remember, this is a ghost team, and you run the suicides because everybody else had that team as the leftover team.
So for some context, it was not just an open draft. There were categories that each of the teams were placed into. So there were 4 top teams that Justin, was it you or did Steve determine were the 4 top preseason
Justin
teams?
I did. We went through the whole
And so then we each picked one, and then the 4th one, that was the Ghost team's first round pick. And so that went through. So the reason the Ghost team is so strong isn't because we left all of them for the last 4 picks of the draft. It's because there were categories we had to choose from.
Yep. And if you left them for dead, that's your fault.
So in our
So
version,
they're almost like tiers. Like you did
There were
tier
4 tiers.
drafts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Eric, you're representing Team Ghost today, so I'll read off your teams real quick. You had Team Ghost has Baylor, Texas Tech, UCF, and Colorado. They are combined 34-9 this year. So they are currently second in our 4-team competition right now. Joel had Kansas, Cincinnati, West Virginia, and Arizona State. He's 37-7 right now. So Joel knows ball, the most ball knower of us all.
Sure. Yep. Exactly. Frame that.
Yeah, the most ball knower. I can't do English. Justin, he had Iowa State, Kansas State, BYU, and Utah. He's 33-11, but Kansas State is dragging him down. So we'll see how many Bearcats you have to run at the end of the year, Justin. And I'm actually taking up the rear right now. I'm 30-14 because I had Houston, Arizona, TCU, and Oklahoma State. And I think all 3 of those last teams are not going to make the tournament. So maybe Arizona if they step it up, but I think I'm going to be running a few at the end of the year.
It's very, very possible. And so I'm curious, Eric, from everything that you just heard, between all of those teams, it might be, we just threw a lot of information at you, but from what you can recall, what team do you think actually has the best shot?
So one thing I noticed with the teams I have as the Ghost, as the representation for the Ghost team, is man, our out of conference schedules were real nice, and it's some easy, like Baylor just beat Arlington Baptist last night by 90. Not actually 90, just leaning into it a little. But UCF and Colorado suck, and they didn't play anybody. But we're up top right now. I think Texas Tech might carry us a little. But so who has Arizona here? Is that Steve?
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve.
I think you might be in trouble, man.
Yeah. I'm a little worried about that. And then honestly, Houston does not look as good this year as they did last year, and that could be expected. You lose Jamal Shedd, they kind of just don't look like they're missing him a lot right now. So I am a little bit worried about and then TCU and Oklahoma State. I think those 2 are going to probably bring up the rear in the league. So I was telling the guys, it's like there's a community park that's like less than a mile walking distance from me, and it's a shortened court. So if they want me to run like actual 94 feet, I can do that. I can set that up. But just to make it easier on myself and everybody, I was just going to do the park court. So, but yeah, I've already been scoping this out.
We're going to make your punishment easier for you.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that, because we should just live stream it while like Levitard style. We're just doing the podcast. You guys are doing the podcast in the background, and then I'm like doing the laps.
That'd be amazing. Well, as of right now, Justin's going to have to be running with you, so I might just have to talk to myself for a little bit.
Yeah, we're that's I'm not ready for some suicides, guys. I'm not in shape. Hoping that I will be in shape by the time those come around, but
here's
gonna have to start practicing.
Here's where you guys went wrong. See, you looked at schedules, you went by preseason rankings, you went by recruiting, transfer portal, all that good stuff. You got to go based on vibes. Kansas is Kansas. That was my first round pick. Second round pick was Cincy, the forever optimist in me. My third round pick came down to choosing between UCF or West Virginia, and can't root for UCF. So there was that choice. And then I had the options open for the last 4, and Arizona State's a great party school. So that was the vibes on that.
That is all team vibes.
All team vibes. But as Steve quoted me earlier, the most ball knower. So I did something right.
That's very fair. Eric, did you happen to see the what we just sent over to you?
I got it.
Yeah. It gives you a little bit better of a guide. we kind of
wrote my teams down on my screen here because I didn't want to. but I'm hoping Baylor loses against Cincinnati here.
Yeah.
I think that the West Virginia pick over who did you say you picked them over?
UCF.
UCF. You know, you have to stay true to your heart here.
Mm-hmm.
But then DeVries gets hurt, so now it's like West Virginia still looks better though.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so I'm not running suicides, guys.
No. You're not.
No, that's
The ghost
Charlie.
team.
Now that you're on the show, you are officially the.
We'll make
That is
Houdini
so
and
cool.
Niehaus do it
Like,
for
hey,
not
man.
joining the team.
Oh, I
Thanks
bet you
for
Houdini
joining
can run
us
some
this week.
suicides.
You're gonna run suicides now. That's your homework.
Yeah.
No, you're the pace setter. If anything, you're the pace setter. And if any of us quit in the middle of those runs, we're gonna have to add an extra one just for misery. You know, that's how it goes. You got to do them all in one go. You don't get to break them up.
Would you guys rather do suicides or the Fitnessgram pacer test?
Is that what
What
they
is
do
this?
for like middle schools?
No.
That was the old middle school. Like you had to
I'm
run
surprised
every
you
time
remember
the beep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you this much. I can't run a 9-minute mile.
No.
It's going to be a slow suicide.
I can't either.
Well,
maybe 15, maybe.
that's okay. That's okay. Well, here, we've covered all of that. We went into the weeds. It's fine. Here's what we've got as our last set for the Big 12 head-to-head. We've kind of talked about it, pinned on it, but we're going to make an official prediction because we like to do that here. How many bids at the end of this season will the Big 12 officially have going into the NCAA tournament? The number might be weaker than it was last year. It's not going to be setting any records, but where do we think the Big 12 is going to sit by the time March goes in full swing? Eric, you start.
I'm going to say 8. I think that's pretty conservative, and we honestly might all say 8. I think 7's like the lock. Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Baylor, Arizona. And when I say 7's a lock, that doesn't mean Arizona's at 17. But if they don't get in, BYU, I think there's a pretty big gap after that. And West Virginia has been good so far, but Tucker, is it DeVries? I don't know. He's out right now, and there's like I was reading the Trilly Discord for West Virginia, and some of them think he's out.
Oh,
That he might be doing that medical redshirt thing because he's magically got hurt. Or he's been fighting through an injury and just tapped out right before the 30% of the season's played. And, his dad's coach. So it's like, hey, maybe one more go next year with a better team. I'm totally buying that conspiracy. I'm all in on that. I think he's out. I think he's done.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be 8. It's those 7 I mentioned plus BYU is what I'm going with.
That's very fair. Joel?
Yeah, I was looking through the rankings and I was floating right around 8 as well.
Very fair.
Now, I want to be optimistic and say 9 just because I have a high floor or I have a high belief in Arizona State. I really like Jaden Quaintance. And I don't really think Bobby Hurley is a great coach, but I think like Quaintance just has enough talent. Now it is the Big 12. So, and they played like you said, like a bunch of dog shit during the non-con. So I kind of don't think I don't really think they can do much, but if Quaintance really just becomes like a dude, and it's really hard for a freshman to become a dude in Big 12. But if those he and then there's another freshman that I'm not remembering right now, but Quaintance has been kind of leading that team.
Sinan.
Yeah. So I kind of want to say 9 just because I think obviously that's better for the league, and I do think that the nice thing about being in a league like this is that you kind of get the benefit of the doubt when it's like a mid-major 27, 28 win team, or it's Arizona State who won 20 games. Arizona State, yeah, we'll add them. So I kind of like just wonder if we'll get the benefit of the doubt. I don't think we will, just because we're not the best league. It'll probably be the SEC that gets that benefit of the doubt if it's that last 4 teams in. But I want to be optimistic at least.
That's very fair. Honestly, I'm gonna sound. This might sound crazy. This might sound actually crazy. I'm gonna say 7. I'm gonna say 7. I think what is starting to happen, which this sucks. Maybe this will be worst case scenario. The writing's kind of on the wall. What happens in non-con and the way the conferences get talked up, there's been a shift. People still say the Big 12 is a great basketball conference, but there's been a huge shift in the way that people have perceived them just at the start of the season. If you go through the net rankings right now and you just look where everything is in quad 1, there is two teams that have a winning record in quad 1 right now for the Big 12. That's the list. And that is West Virginia, who's 2-1 in Q1, and Iowa State, who is also 3-1 in Q1. So between that list, I really feel like the writing's kind of on the wall. I think they're trying to count some of these teams out. And when you get to conference play, there's going to be some teams beating up on each other. You're going to see some shift, but it's kind of like that thing where once you have your non-con set, you're going to have great games. You're going to have back and forth, but just look at what happened to football this year with the Big 12. If you have a good team who loses to an unranked team, it's not the unranked team is better. It's that the good team actually sucks. And so that's what I'm concerned about is going to be the narrative, because you're already seeing that happen. And I'm wondering if it's really going to slip. I would like to think that there's going to be 8, 9, maybe even 10, but realistically, I think you're looking at West Virginia probably starts to perform well. Arizona, based on the way they've played, they're 0-5 in Q1. They've played some really tough teams. They also have let pretty much every single game in Q1 get away from them, except for the UCLA one, which was like a 3-point game in a rock fight. Like some of these teams, I think, are just going to play their way out. I think it's going to be a tighter pack at the top for the Big 12, but I do think that's also kind of an interesting thing where, again, we said it all show long, the Bearcats might actually be able to play their way up into conference championship contention if they just do the right things at the right time and take care of business in some of these games. But I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a shorter field than we expect, personally.
I think 7's more likely than 10 by a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because who's the 10th team? I don't think there's a 10th team.
If you get to 10, it's like BYU, West Virginia, Arizona State. Those teams have to like just beat Houston, Iowa State, Kansas a couple times each, because like you said, we don't have that like built-in thing that the SEC has where they're going to cruise to 12 bids, maybe 13.
Yeah, I mean, you look at last year too, is like the Big 12 was doing that last year. The Big 12's non-con record was insane. And every team was really good, but you already have like K-State, who should have been a very strong team, is already 120 in the 120s in net, which does you no favors. And so if you consider where that's at for the Bearcats playing, you're already, I mean, that's even on the road, that's a Q2 game. So like to start off the season, you're already not getting credit for what will be a tough opponent. What will be somebody is very dangerous and as a 6-5 team could very well beat you. And so I don't know. I look at that. Everybody except for Oklahoma State and Kansas State is within the top 80, 85. But it's a very wide spread this year, whereas last year it was pretty tight and you had a pretty tight up high, and then you had everybody else like sub 100. Yeah, I think West Virginia was probably the only team who was net 100 plus. And so I don't know. Like I said, I think it just gets tight this year. And I think, quite honestly, it's going to be less bids. But I do think that the bids will be stronger than they were last year, and to that degree. And I think the teams that do shake out to the top, you're just going to see a better cluster of teams at the top, and you're going to see a wider gap. I don't think that you're going to see last year where you have a bunch of teams who are right in the middle. And quite honestly, that's probably better for you if you have more of a divide than less of a divide, because the wider it is, the less strong your conference looks like. And that's the same thing that happened to football. Like you look at how everybody just had 1, 2, or 3 losses at the end of the year. And it's like, well, none of these teams are good. You know, they lost to A, B, or C. And unfortunately, you don't always get to play the top team. At least in basketball, you get to play everybody. But I don't know. I'm talking a ton. Steve, where are we going?
Let's go to the Bearcat Sports Wrapup. There is really not much going on right now. Only one thing to mention is that the UC women's team did drop their first game of the Big 12 season again at Kansas State. So hopefully the men can avenge them tomorrow night as we're recording. So they will host BYU this upcoming Wednesday on New Year's Day. So if you're off work, not doing anything, head on down to the women's game, man. They're running a 5-1-3 special. It's a $5 beers, $5 Cincy Lights, $1 hot dogs, and $3 like ice cream or something like that. So,
Nice.
You got nothing else to do. Go ahead and go down there and watch the game. Jillian Hayes, like I am making a trip to Tucson to go see Jillian Hayes. I live in Arizona. I won't be in town for the Arizona State game. So I am making a 2-hour trip after work for a 6 o'clock game to go see Jillian Hayes play. Cause like that's how much I want to see her play. So go make sure you watch her play. So hosting BYU for their first Big 12 home game of the season, and then they will go to TCU to play against Haley Van Lith this upcoming Saturday. So shout out to the women's team, Katrina Merriweather, really doing the thing. So keep it up. I did want a really quick shout out. I sent this to you guys last night. The UNLV club hockey team played an exhibition game against Denver's Division I, like real hockey team, and they won in a shootout. So the Bearcats, our club hockey team is stepping up to Division I of club hockey next year. So I did want to like shout them because they don't play for another couple weeks. But man, that's like if I want to see what a UC versus Miami hockey game would look like now. Like get Miami's D1 team out there and play the game at Miami, and then let's see what happens. Like maybe victory bell all over again.
Some FCS D2 madness is what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
All sports. We love to see it.
Yeah.
Unless it's Bearcats playing basketball and we're on the wrong side of it.
Yeah. Hockey's fun though. So hockey, a good time to be watching hockey right now.
Hacky. All right. Well, we have talked for a grand total of 1 hour and 2 minutes. So I think that is plenty. Guys, thank you so much for joining me this week. And Eric, special thanks to you as well as to Charlie for joining us on this week's episode. It was a very fun time. Always good to preview the Big 12, and it's going to be a really interesting season. Like we said, you got 20 games. It's a clean slate. See how everything goes. We got K-State starting tomorrow night. Tonight, for those of you who are listening on release date day at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. God's time. And Joel will not argue on me. No, I will not hear it. Central time is God time. With all that said, thank you very much. Have a very, very happy new year. And thank you to our sponsors, Charlie Hustle, for always bringing the best merch. And thank you to the 1012 Network, as always, for bringing the network connections. We love it. We got to get everybody shouted out here. So, Eric, one last time, tell us where we can find you, and then we'll get on out of here.
At Bearcat Bunch on Twitter. And let's celebrate this one tomorrow. I didn't say an official score. I'm saying Cats by 18.
Oh, I like it. Eric,
that.
The mantra of this Big 12 schedule now, as you mentioned, is going hard. So we're going in hard.
Yeah, this is it. 2 games a week. There's no breaks after this. Hickman's boots coming off. Time to lock and load.
Let's go.
Very nice. I said 8 earlier. I'm going to screw it. Say 90. Cats by 90. Cats by 90. In K-State in Manhattan. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Happy New Year. Viva
La
Cats.